It began with a peaceful march with music blaring from the Eagle Square to the National Assembly complex. Youth, women, and some elderly people who are indigenes of the Federal Capital Territory joined in the protest to express their dissatisfaction with the composition of the North Central Development Commission, as one Solomon Adodo from Benue State was given their spot in the board. They want the nomination reversed and for the National Assembly not to confirm him. On the board of the North Central Development Commission, Benue State has 4 nominations while the FCT has none, and that is the reason for this protest. Now, the original inhabitants of the Federal Capital Territory has blocked entrance to the National Assembly with a call on the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, to reverse the nomination of the FCT that was given to a Benue State indigene. At the main gate of the National Assembly, the protesters waited patiently for lawmakers to submit their protest letter and express their mind, but for more than 2 hours, no lawmaker or representative attended to them.
We are here to tell the government of the day. The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we know him to be the president and lover of peace, justice, equity for all Nigerians. We want to tell the Senate President, Mr. Godswill Akpabio, that this responsibility is saddled on his decks. Police and FCT natives should be quickly replaced with Solomon Adodo from Benue State.
We saw all of the states that constitute the North Central states, about 7 states including FCT, are duly represented in the board. But FCT representative is from Benue, Solomon Adodo is from Benue State, is not from FCT. Section 2 sub 1b of the Act stated clearly that there shall be an indigene of each state that constitutes where that commission is being established, which is the North Central. So it is expected that FCT indigene should represent the FCT people in the board.
A detachment of armed police officers later came to have a discussion with the protesters. They urged the protesters to leave the National Assembly main gate, but the protesters insist they needed the representative from the National Assembly to attend to them and accept their protest letter.
If you go through the list, you will notice that Benue as a state has about 4 representatives from the state, with one Solomon Adodo of Benue State representing the FCT. The people of FCT, having National Assembly as their own state assembly, have decided to gather here to speak to the leadership of the assembly that they should convey our message to the National Assembly, to the federal government, and all authority concerned that FCT is not represented in the North Central Development Commission.
After some time, the policemen got tired of the protesters blocking the gate to the National Assembly and decided to deploy one of their crowd control mechanisms, tear gas, even as protesters ran for safety with some persons sustaining injuries. For now, the FCT indigenes have taken a retreat, but no one knows the extent the protesters will go to fight for what they believe is an injustice against the indigenes of the Federal Capital Territory. Tunji Olanipekun, Arise News.
Well, an update on that story. The Federal Capital Territory Commissioner of Police, Ajao Adewale, has met with protesters over the crisis. We'll have updates on that meeting as the story unfolds.
Absolutely. Now let's bring in lawyer and Arise analyst Frank Tietie. Frank, good to see you again on Newsnight tonight. What do you make of this? Not just what the protesters are asking for, saying we deserve representation as FCT on the board of the North Central Development Commission. Is this an oversight that FCT has no representation at all?
I think first and foremost, the matter is so sensitive, but sad as it may be, is the reaction of the authorities by sending policemen to tear gas protesters at the very heart of democracy, the National Assembly. That's not a very good sight. And to do that to a people that I believe have sacrificed the most for this country. Many people talk about the Niger Delta producing oil and the rest, but nobody has talked about their lands being taken for total development of a Federal Capital Territory, as Nigeria has done to the indigenes of the FCT, particularly Baggies and all that. And to think that they are being oppressed and they are expressing themselves at the place they thought they will have the greatest freedom, and to be treated that way is not only a national embarrassment, but a confirmation that we are building a country on the foundation of oppression. That should stop. That should end. Now, they're not even asking for too much. They're asking for a legal thing that is constitutional under Section 14 of this or the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that you cannot give. You cannot dominate any aspect of government, or you don't allow it to be dominated by a number of persons as against the interest of another group of persons who will feel excluded. The people of the FCT should never feel excluded. They are aboriginals. You need to see and you need to know how aboriginals are treated in Australia. Many times before a meeting starts, they first of all they acknowledge them first, because they know the amount of you sacrifice. You come and displace people, affect their culture for life, and then the least the Nigerian state can do for the people of FCT is to constantly, every time we have a meeting in Federal Capital Territory, acknowledge what sacrifice, the immense sacrifices they have made. Now, to think brazenly, blatantly, that you're looking them at the face and say, look, we don't recognize you, in a situation where they need just one representative, that same representative was removed from them, and then they are not saying this is wrong. They didn't need to go to that extent. If they only want a single press statement would have been sufficient, but they had to do so because it looks as if those who are leading us are deaf most of the time, because you need to shout to high heavens to say, look, you are oppressing us. And to think that this is the way they have been treated, no. Senate President Godswill Akpabio can certainly do better, because we all belong to the minority stock. How do you complain as a Niger Deltan? And what's most painful is that, look, are there not other nationalities in the National Assembly? Would they see that happening to a minority group and allow that? How is it that a major tribe will produce 4 representatives and take away just the only one belonging to another nationality, and everybody's quiet, and it took all that number of hours of protest, of shouting to high heavens? Nobody could come among the senators or the members of the House of Representatives to come and receive a letter. Don't they have a representative? What kind of oppression and disregard is that?
Well,
come on.
The optics are very bad, and it's good to hear that the FCT police has stepped into this matter. We'll follow up to hear what they have to say about the actions of their men. But, you talk about the right to protest and freedom of expression in Nigeria, and it's worrisome that someone would take their grievance to the National Assembly and be treated this way. How is it that the indigenous people of Abuja have become so invincible despite, hosting the country's seat of power? What do you think is responsible for this invincibility we're seeing? Because some have called, let me ask you, there are those who, after this protest, are now calling for the establishment of the FCT as a state before 2027.
I would have, of course, we do have what we call the Federal Capital Territory Development Authority. Is it for the FCT Indigenes? No, it's for the entire Nigeria. I think what we should be talking about is to recognize the special status of the people of the Federal Capital Territory, recognizing the sacrifice that
when you say recognizing it, do they even have special status in the first place?
No, they should. Come on. Look, when Lagos was the Federal Capital Territory, some persons laid claim to it in terms of ethnic nationalities, and directly got some benefits because you could see the development around Lagos, right? Their lands weren't taken, but in the case of the FCT, from nowhere by a military decree, you take all, you expropriate their lands for national development. I think the people of Nigeria, the people of the Federal Capital Territory against Niger Delta, have suffered the most. But because it has to do with land, and we think that oil and gas is more important or are more important than land. No, you are destroying. You need to look at the right of indigenous people, and you should know, because of that, a special commission should even be set up specifically for the people, for the development of the people of FCT. And I think there's a problem. They are not properly represented, and they're not, pushing their interests loud enough. And I think this is just one feeble attempt to assert the fact that they need to be recognized, and look at the way they are being treated. Don't forget, and we must shift this history, that we are not a country that is built on oppression and repression. And that's what's been emphasized, and we don't like that. And I would have thought that the majority, because that's what democracy is all about, the majority should protect the minority. In this case, and oftentimes in our country, the majority wants to, tell the minority to its face that we are a majority and we've got the right to oppress you and do not recognize your rights. That can't be. Legally, the right of indigenous persons. Yeah. And I wonder that Nigerians shouldn't be going to the United Nations to say, look, as indigenous persons, we've been disregarded by our own state. It shouldn't be.
So legally,
and I believe that this should be reversed immediately.
Yes, so legally, is there a pathway for them? Because we talk about the challenges, the problem is here at hand. How do they solve it?
See, you know the problem. The right that they are exercising is actually under Section 14. They are saying that, look, we've got to be, we've been oppressed. The federal character nature of this country is being disregarded with regards to us. They have not even pushed their case enough for in the minds of people like us who are rights activists. However, unfortunately, Section 6 of the Constitution does not allow them to go to court to say, Mr. President, you're wrong on this. But it would have been better there was no commission in the first place. They were complaining, but don't insult them. Don't tell them to their faces that you do not matter. And again, why should another group take delight in dominating smaller groups like the FCT, the indigenous of the FCT? But it must be clear, because of the immense sacrifices the people of the FCT, the Igbagis have made to this country, they should not, you are not doing them a favor if you give them their own right by being represented by just one slot. In fact, they deserve much more than that. And again, this is too glaring, this is too brazen for the world to see that Nigeria can do better. So, and I expect that they don't need to go to court, and they don't need to wait for one more day before the National Assembly refuses to recognize this aberration, this blatant disregard of the rights of the people of the FCT.
So just like I asked Frank Tietie, just like I asked initially, should we just take this as an oversight? So how do you correct this oversight? Should we just take it that it's, you know, an unfortunate oversight?
If we accept that would be good, because the current Senate president comes from a minority group, and he understands how much of repression can be so painful for minorities.
So how do you correct this anomaly, not just in this case, but in other areas where the FCT Indigenes have felt injustice?
There are very many areas, but they don't talk, and I wonder what their representatives are doing. Unfortunately, we have made it in such a manner that those who even represent the FCT, either in the House of Representatives or the Senate, may not necessarily be indigenous, and that's unfair in the first place. Very, very unfair. So they may not be able to measure the pulse of the people. I'm very much in touch with the Igbagis. I was a teacher in Nasarawa State where I taught Igbagis students, so I know how much of the deprivation they have as a result of the fact that there was development of the FCT and they had to be moved from all of these towns down. And I see the neglect, in the sense that the federal government could have done more. I taught them for years in that place, whether as a lesson teacher or as a school teacher, so I am in touch with that. And to date, we still struggle on how to see how much to compensate the people of the Igbagi people, for example. Now, what needs to be done is that they really need to speak more. We want representatives who are in touch with the needs of the people of the FCT, the originals of the FCT, so that the government can know, look, for a country that is supposed to be built on the principles of freedom, equity, and justice, this is not good. And I think that even if it's an oversight, I am very confident that Senate President Godswill Akpabio will not allow this. And I'm also very confident that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has oftentimes reversed certain decisions that are offensive and reprehensible. This is a good example, and I expect that in the next 24 hours, a statement from the government should reverse this injustice and correct the situation so that the people of the FCT can have a sense of belonging. It's enough that they are already being oppressed.
Should the headquarters of this NCDC also be
expectedly? Shouldn't it be here? Shouldn't it be closer to President Tinubu, or shouldn't it be closer to the president? Shouldn't it be closer to the Minister of Finance, so that monies can flow quickly for the people of the development? However, let us understand that the Act does consider that it's as a result of the untold hardships and displacement, as a result of insecurity that have been suffered by the people of North Central. That's why the commission has been established. So one understands that, okay, you may focus in states like Nasarawa and Benue, but look, the real persons who are deprived of their land, nothing can be more oppressive, nothing can be more of a deprivation. So I expect that it should have been here. Now, you take it away from Abuja, you take it away from them, and then you also take the leadership, and then you also take their representation from them. Nothing could be that bad.
It does look like the lived realities of the indigenous people of Abuja. Thank you so much, Frank Tietie, Arise News analyst and human rights activist.